Welcome to the Ironwood Gym. Why are we still talking about squat depth in 2026? Guys, we have been through so many years of strength conditioning, powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman, and yet there is still this stigma to squats that squatting below a certain depth is bad for your knees or bad for your back. And in certain cases, that's probably true. But most of the time, people are just giving opinions based off their own personal biases because they like it, or they know one person who had an uncle, who had a brother, who had a distant cousin, that it was bad for their knees. And it's been passed down through generations, and now it's just commonplace that squatting deep is bad. Couldn't be more true. And if you look at, well, let's do it this way. I'm going to try to break this down as absolutely simple as possible for each different group or category of lifter or fitness. Okay, so we're going to take the easy ones first. Weightlifters. That's the Olympic style weightlifters. So if you watch the Olympics, if you're not familiar with weightlifting, if you watch the Olympics and they do the snatch and the clean and jerk, that is what I'm talking about. That is the sport of weightlifting. Weightlifters need to squat deep. Look at their sport. Okay, they have to be in a deep squat position. They have to receive the weight in the clean most of the time, with those extremely rare exceptions for people who actually receive the weight high. But 99% of lifters are going to receive the weight in a deep front squat position. That necessitates the use of a deep front squat to prepare for their sport. In the snatch, they do the same. They receive the squat in a very deep overhead squat position, which is going to necessitate the use of deep overhead squats or deep back squats to prepare for their sport. Even for the fronts or for the clean, a deep back squat is going to help with overall leg strength, quad strength, and the ability to bring up their front squat, which will in turn help bring up their clean. So weightlifters, yes, they need to squat deep. Powerlifters, that is the sport of the squat, bench, and deadlift. Now, there is not a necessity to squat for the bench, obviously. For the deadlift, squatting deep can actually help improve quad strength for breaking the bar off the ground, but not necessarily a necessity, as you can do it through other means. You can do it through leg presses, you can do it through hack squats, you could do it through just a narrower stance squat, going to about parallel. But for the squat itself, it is part of the sport. Now, there is no requirement to sink unless you're in one of those federations that requires you to go beyond the rules, which I could name a couple. But most of the time, the crease of the hip just has to break parallel, or the parallel line drawn from the knee, from the top of the knee. So as long as the crease of the hip breaks that point, that is a legal squat. And that is all this further down you need to squat, even in training. However, squatting deeper than that can help in a couple different ways. Number one, if you are a closer stance squatter, meaning you use a lot of quads in your squat, in your competition style squat, then squatting deeper can actually help bring up your quad strength to a pretty great degree, meaning that you will have more quad strength to utilize in your competition depth. So in that way, yes, squatting deeper would actually be beneficial for a powerlifter. The second way is, and this goes for whether you are a wider stance squatter or a closer stance squatter, doesn't matter. Sinking squats down deep can help improve the flexibility and mobility of your hips, therefore helping improve long-term health of those joints. But it is not a necessity, again, not a necessity for the sport to go any deeper than the crease of the hip breaking the top of that line drawn from the top of the knee. So that's for powerlifting. Good, but not necessarily a necessity. Okay, the sport of strongman. Now, I am not extremely well versed in strongman, but the competitions that I have seen have never required strongman competitors or those lifters to sink very far below parallel if they are going below parallel at all. So the requirements for the sport do not necessitate utilizing a deep, all the way down, squatting butt to heels type of squat. However, just like I said in powerlifting, for the long-term health, for the development of the quads, flexibility, mobility, it could be beneficial for them to squat down deeper. Bringing in the front squat to play, squatting deep with the front squat is excellent for developing ab strength, and strongmen need a ton of ab strength. So in that way, that would be beneficial. But is it a requirement? No. Okay, moving on to CrossFit. I know very little about CrossFit, but the competitions that I have seen, all of the lifters were squatting well below that powerlifting legal depth. Well below crease of the hip, below the top of the knee. So therefore, if it is a requirement, then yes, they need to do that for their sport. Okay? But beyond that, there is no necessity. Again, I'm not well versed in the rules of CrossFit. If it is a requirement, then yes, they need to do it. Okay, so now moving on to the tricky ones. These are the ones that cause a little bit more confusion, and I think the ones that have a greater debate, and that is general fitness and athletics, okay, sports. So I'm going to go with the general fitness first. It's a little bit easier because with general fitness, first off, no one really knows what general fitness is because it's different for everyone and it has no real definition. So it really depends on the person. And the key thing you need to look at is, can you squat deep safely? If you can do it without your knee caving in, without your spine curling under, without your feet, your heels coming off the floor or shifting over onto the ball of your foot, that's usually when your knee is caving in. If you can do it safely without those things happening, my recommendation would be to squat deeper rather than higher. Yes, it is harder. That's okay. It's going to get you better leg development from both the hamstrings and the quads, and it's going to ensure good range of motion in the hips, good flexibility or mobility of the hips. So there's my take on fitness. I'm going to leave it at that. Again, there is no specific requirement. You can't say I'm in better shape because I squat deeper, okay? But if you have the ability to squat deeper and you can do it safely, then I think it would be better for the health of the body to squat deeper. Okay, now getting into athletics. And I worked in athletics for a number of years. I coached at the college level for 17 years. And this is going to be my takeaway. Number one, if you test your athletes, you keep records, okay, either one or both, you need to have a standard. And I've seen the big thing for the last decade has been posting gym lifts by athletes as far as setting records or PRs or whatever the case may be, posting those online, posting them on Facebook, posting them on Instagram, posting them on YouTube, saying, look at what my team did. Look at what these athletes that I coach did. And inevitably, I see people squatting very high. Now, if you have a set depth and you're saying you always squat to the same exact depth, then fine, go with it. Who cares? But if you have them squat deep on one day, on testing day number 1, and then on testing day number 2, a year later or a semester later, you let them squat 3 inches higher, you don't know if they got stronger or not. So have them squat to the same depth every single time. Number 2, okay, is there a requirement for athletes to squat deep? A requirement? No, because squatting is a general exercise when it comes to all sports other than strength sports. It is a general exercise. What does that mean? Well, for football, I've never seen them set up a squat rack or squat stands and a bar with weights on the 50-yard line and have the athletes go out and have a squat off in the middle of a football game. In fact, I've never seen it in soccer. I've never seen it at mid-court in a basketball game. I've never seen it at home plate at a baseball game or in the outfield. I've never seen it on a wrestling mat. Hopefully you're getting my point here. Squatting is not a requirement for sports. Period. It is not a requirement for sports. It is a general exercise. However, there are numerous benefits that athletes can get from squatting, and I think most athletes should be squatting. Not all athletes. Most. Okay? I didn't say sports, I said athletes. And there's a difference between the two. For squat depth for athletes, okay, my recommendation is if you're squatting with a narrow stance and you're letting the knees travel forward, have them squat deep, pending their flexibility. If they have good flexibility, have them squat deep. If they cannot reach depth safely, then don't have them squat deep. I worked with a guy my last few years of coaching who couldn't even do a quarter squat. Did I have him squat? Yes. Did I have him squat beyond quarter squat depth? No. Okay? And I just tried to get him to work his flexibility with a barbell on his back. But once he got past quarter squat depth, and I mean high quarter squat depth, maybe not even a quarter squat, he started bending around in his spine. His feet started losing position. He couldn't do it. It is the worst case of flexibility I've ever seen. As a pitcher in baseball. So I only had him do what he could do. We got our strength from the leg press. We got flexibility from the squat. He got better over time, but he was never good enough to squat deep. Did I have him squat deep? No. Did I ever test him in a squat? No. Okay? So have a standard, but understand that that standard is going to be dependent upon the athletes. So if the athlete can't actually get to a proper depth safely, they probably shouldn't be squatting deeper. Now, what are the benefits from squatting deeper versus higher? Again, if you have them squat with a closer stance, let their knees travel forward, and they can hit squat depth safely, the benefits are going to be added quad strength, added hamstring strength, flexibility, and overall better health of the knee. If they have knee problems and getting deep bothers their knees, then you need to critique their squat, possibly even keep them a little bit higher and work to develop the flexibility and the strength necessary to be able to squat deep. Over time, they should be able to get deeper and be able to get deeper pain-free, but it may take some time. Now, if you're squatting with a wider stance, much like a competition style powerlifting squat with a wide stance where your shins stay mostly vertical, then no, I don't recommend squatting super deep. I recommend squatting crease of the hip at or about the height of the knee, maybe slightly below. Going below that is going to put a lot of extra stress on their hips that's just not necessary. But again, all the same things need to hold true. They need to be doing it safely. They need to have their knees in proper position. They need to have their spine in proper position. If they cannot keep those things in proper position, then they can only squat or should only attempt to squat to a depth that allows them to keep those things in proper position. That is a safety concern. Okay? So, yes, I think athletes should squat deep if they're using a closer stance, if they're capable of doing it safely. If they're not, then no, they shouldn't squat deep. But as deep as possible. Again, the benefits of being deep are good. From a performance standpoint, especially in the track and field world, track coaches like to come with the argument that if they only bend their knee to a quarter squat depth, that's all the further that they should squat when it comes to lifting. That's not really true, okay? And then they'll show, oh, well, my guys can squat 500 pounds. Yeah, but they're barely bending their knees to do it. I can take those same athletes, have them squat deeper, and initially that 500, then maybe they can only squat 315 to a depth. But it's going to be very beneficial for their hamstrings to have them get down to that depth. and it's going to create better strength overall. Then we can take them, maybe get in competition, maybe in the season or at the end of the season, and only have them do a quarter squat to more mimic the demands of the sport. But those athletes that squatted deep can achieve that 500-pound squat in a matter of weeks. It's just a matter of getting used to the weight. Those athletes that only achieved the 500-pound quarter squat and never squatted deeper will never be able to squat 315. So their strength is actually limited. Therefore, the athletes that squatted 315 deep are actually stronger than those athletes that only did the quarter squats. I hope I didn't butcher that explanation, but squatting deep will prepare your strength levels to a much greater degree than simply adding a lot of weight and staying and squatting high. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions about squat depth, please post them in the comments. I'll definitely get back to you. But until next time, always be in the pursuit of strength.